You can stay somewhere else tonight, Mom, Daniel said through the front door less than 2 hours after we buried Richard. I froze, my black heels sinking into the damp November grass. In my hand, the folded sympathy cards people had pressed into mine after the funeral fluttered slightly in the wind. I thought for a moment I had misheard. My own son, the boy I had raised, standing in the doorway, telling me to leave my home. The wind carried the faint smell of wet leaves across Hartford Hills. The porch light flickered above me, as if uncertain whether to stay alive. I tightened my grip on my purse and tried the key again. It wouldn't turn, not even a little. Through the frosted glass, I glimpsed Vanessa's silhouette crossing the hallway.
Calm, poised,
Elegant,
host-like.
She wasn't rushing, wasn't worried, just standing there like she owned everything that had once belonged to our family. My chest tightened. Daniel, I said softly, my key isn't working. The door opened 3 inches. His face appeared. His black tie hung loose. Exhaustion lined him, but not grief. Just irritation, like I was an inconvenience. We changed the locks this afternoon, he said quietly. I stared. Silence stretched across the damp evening. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice, then nothing. Funeral hymns still echoed in my mind. My husband had been buried less than 2 hours ago. You changed the locks, I repeated. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, that old gesture from childhood when he lied. Vanessa, and I think it's better if everyone has some space.
Space.
A soft word for cruelty. I looked into the warm yellow glow of the chandelier. Empty spots where our family photos had hung. The bench Richard built was gone. I realized my life in that house was being erased, almost ceremoniously. Where are my things?
I asked.
Daniel hesitated. Finally, we packed some essentials for you. He nodded toward the garage. 2 navy blue suitcases gleamed, wet beside the trash bins. I recognized them immediately. Our 20th anniversary trip to Maine. My chest constricted. Vanessa rested a hand lightly on Daniel's shoulder, offering a polite smile that never reached her eyes. Margaret, she said softly, almost like speaking to a customer, you shouldn't be alone tonight. We booked you a room at the Maple Crest Inn for a few days so everyone can process things peacefully.
Peacefully.
Another soft word masking cruelty. I looked at Daniel, expecting him to intervene, to remember who I was. The boy who once cried for 2 days when our golden retriever died now stood behind a chained door while I shivered outside in funeral clothes. Your father was buried today, I whispered. His eyes flickered downward. Guilt? Shame? Something was alive inside him, then gone under Vanessa's guiding hand. It's temporary, he said. This house is a lot to manage now. I almost laughed, not from humor, but from clarity. Richard had spent 15 years pouring himself into that house, calling it memory, calling it family. And now I was being erased. The cold air cut through my thin coat. My hands trembled, not from grief anymore, but from recognition. Vanessa leaned closer. The motel check-in closes at 10. You should probably leave soon. I stared. Neither invited me inside. Finally, I nodded.
Calmly.
Quietly. The way I had nodded all afternoon to condolences that felt hollow. I stepped off the porch toward the garage. The front door closed softly, the deadbolt sliding with finality. The Maple Crest Inn loomed behind Interstate 84, beside a gas station and a closed diner with dusty red booths. Neon vacancy buzzed in the damp darkness. One wheel of my suitcase stuck as I dragged it across the parking lot. Inside the room, I set my purse down. The heater rattled faintly. Room 214. 2 queen beds. Floral bedspread stiff. Television bolted to dresser. Warm, yet I shivered. I set a sympathy card from our neighbor Helen on the nightstand. Her note, Richard was one of the good ones. You were blessed to have each other.
Blessed.
Not a word Daniel or Vanessa would have used tonight. Midnight. Ice clattered into a vending machine tray outside. I lay back against the pillows, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. Richard's absence was a weight, but so was clarity. My family had betrayed me before the flowers began to wilt. 3 weeks earlier, I had seen Vanessa, with his office folder, helping organize paperwork. I had believed her. Trusting them had been my mistake. I pressed my hand to my mouth and cried quietly, mourning more than Richard, mourning the family I thought I had. The motel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and air conditioner, a scent too sterile to be comforting. I set my purse on the small desk by the window and pulled the blankets back slightly. The heater rattled against the wall, reminding me that warmth could be mechanical, not human. I perched on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, and tried to steady my breathing. My hands were cold, though my body was not. The tremor came from disbelief and something sharper, something like betrayal etched into my bones. I looked at the second bed, unmade, with a floral bedspread stiff as cardboard. It was mine, but it didn't feel like mine. I thought of Richard, how he would have fussed with the sheets, tucked in corners, checking that everything felt right. The familiar weight of his presence was gone, replaced by a void that seemed to stretch endlessly across the room. I missed him so sharply that the ache made me want to reach for him, but there was no one to reach for. Only silence. Only the faint hum of traffic from Interstate 84. I slid open the suitcase Daniel and Vanessa had so thoughtfully packed. The contents were practical: a few changes of clothes, my toiletries, a pair of worn slippers. I reached the bottom and felt the familiar leather of Richard's old watch case. My fingers lingered over it. He had left it by the dresser, the same dresser I had folded his shirts on countless mornings. A pang hit me. He was gone, and this simple object carried the weight of every morning we had shared. Beside it, I found the pill organizer he had been using for his heart medication. The small plastic compartments reminded me of his meticulous nature, the man who counted every detail, who took care of everyone but now could take care of nothing. I felt a lump in my throat and pressed my fingers over it. My thumb traced the letters on the pill bottle's label. Richard Holloway. So real. So painfully absent. I thought about the sympathy cards tucked in my
purse.
Helen's note was there still.
Blessed.
But blessed didn't feel like it applied anymore. It was hollow in a room full of betrayal. I set the card on the nightstand, straightened the edges, and stared at it for several minutes. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just let my mind wander through the rooms of our home, now empty of me, imagining the photographs that had been taken down, the bench that had been moved. I could almost see Vanessa's careful hands, her smile polite, precise. She had made sure to erase my presence while I was still alive, still part of their lives. I walked slowly to the window and watched the damp parking lot outside. A man in a denim jacket smoked near the vending machine. His presence was ordinary, mundane, a reminder that life continued for everyone else. For me, the world had stopped in the moments after Daniel closed that front door. I sat back down and picked up the watch case again, turning it over in my hands. Memories of Richard crowded in. He had been in the kitchen yesterday morning, sipping his coffee, adjusting his reading glasses. I could see him laughing softly at some joke I didn't hear, the creak of the wooden floorboards beneath his feet. That floorboard creak, the one I used to complain about in winter, suddenly felt like a heartbeat. A heartbeat I could no longer hear. I opened the bedside drawer and found my old reading glasses, folded neatly. The familiar weight of them against my fingers brought me back to the world I had lost in a single afternoon. I thought of all the Sundays we had spent together, the breakfast table, the scent of coffee, the papers spread out before us. It had been normal, ordinary, and I had taken it for granted. Now, those details stung like small betrayals, reminders that life could be erased without warning. I realized then that I hadn't cried for Richard yet. I had been frozen outside the house, in my heels, the damp November grass sinking beneath me. Now, in this sterile motel room, I allowed the tears to come. They were quiet at first, just a trickle over my cheeks, then heavier, until I pressed my hand to my mouth to muffle the sound. I let myself mourn the man I had loved for 38
years.
Not just him, but the life we had built together. Hours passed, and the room remained still except for the occasional hum of passing cars and the heater's rhythmic rattling. Midnight stretched to 1, then 2. My phone remained silent for what felt like an eternity. No messages from Daniel, no concern from Vanessa, no apologies, nothing. I placed the watch case beside the sympathy card on the nightstand and let the weight of the betrayal settle deep into my chest. They had acted while I was still reeling, assuming grief would paralyze me. Eventually, I moved to the second bed and sat there, my hands wrapped around a pillow. I replayed the moments on the porch. Daniel's avoidance, Vanessa's polite dominance, the suitcases, the empty house. Each memory clicked into place, forming a pattern that was slowly horrifying in its clarity. They hadn't just been careless. They had planned this, calculated it with precision. My own son and his wife, the people I had trusted, had decided my life no longer mattered within the walls I had nurtured for nearly 4 decades. And yet, amidst the quiet despair, a small ember of resolve flickered. I would not act rashly. I would not confront them tonight. I would let them believe grief had rendered me powerless. But I would begin to understand. I would begin to see what they had been planning, what Vanessa had been calculating, and what Daniel had been hiding behind those tired eyes and polite words. The night stretched on, the hum of the interstate below filling the silence. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, I understood a truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Grief could be weaponized, trust could be stolen, and betrayal could arrive dressed in calm, polite smiles. I pressed my hand to the watch case once more, holding on to what was left of Richard's care. Tomorrow, I would begin to unravel the threads of their deception. By morning, the rain had stopped. A gray, tired light spread across the motel parking lot, showing every puddle, every cigarette butt near the stairwell, every oil stain darkened into the pavement. I had not slept more than 20 minutes at a time. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel through the narrow opening of the chained door. My son, my only child, telling me I needed space from my own life. I made coffee in the tiny motel machine, though calling it coffee felt generous. It tasted burnt and watery, but I held the paper cup with both hands anyway because the warmth steadied me. Richard used to say bad coffee was still better than no coffee at all. He said it every time we stayed somewhere cheap on road trips, when Daniel was little. I almost smiled. Then I remembered he was gone. My phone buzzed at 8:12. A text from Vanessa. Hope you got settled comfortably.
We all need some time right now.
Daniel is overwhelmed. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. No mention of Richard.
No apology.
No question about whether I had eaten, slept, or made it safely to the motel. Just management.
Control.
A polished little sentence designed to sound kind if anyone else ever read it. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. That was when I began remembering things I had not wanted to remember. Not because they were dramatic. They were worse than dramatic. They were small. Small enough to excuse. Small enough to forgive. Small enough to tell yourself you were being sensitive. The first memory came from 3 weeks earlier. Richard had been asleep in his recliner after chemotherapy, a blanket pulled up to his chest, his face thin and pale beneath the living room lamp. I had gone into the kitchen to rinse a mug and found Vanessa standing beside the counter with a folder from Richard's office tucked under one arm. She smiled too quickly. Just helping Daniel organize paperwork, she had said. I remembered the folder clearly now. Dark green. Labeled house insurance/taxes in Richard's handwriting. At the time I had nodded. I trusted her. That was the part that hurt. Not that she lied. That I had made it so easy. Another memory followed. Daniel at the dining room table, 2 months before Richard died, tapping his finger against a stack of mail. Mom, Dad really should simplify some of this, he said. You know, accounts, passwords, legal stuff. It's a lot for you.
For you.
Not for Dad. Not for both of you.
For you.
Vanessa had been beside him that evening, cutting her chicken into tiny pieces, without looking up. It's not an insult, she had added gently. It's just practical. Women your age shouldn't have to carry so much administrative stress. Women your age. I had laughed awkwardly then, because what else does a mother do when her family insults her in a voice soft enough to pass as concern? Richard had not laughed. I remembered that now, too. He had looked at Daniel for a long moment, then changed the subject. Back then, I thought he was tired. Now I wondered if he had already seen the shape of something I refused to name. I opened my suitcase again, more carefully this time. Vanessa had packed my clothes, but not like someone who loved me. Like someone clearing a drawer at a nursing home. 3 blouses. 2 pairs of slacks. Underwear rolled carelessly into a plastic grocery bag. My nightgown, but not the warm one Richard bought me last Christmas. No jewelry case. No photo album. No Bible with my mother's notes in the margins. No hand cream, though I had used the same lavender tube every night for years. Essentials, Daniel had called them. It was astonishing what people considered essential once they had decided you were no longer fully human. I checked the side pocket of the suitcase. My fingers brushed paper. For one foolish second, I thought maybe Vanessa had included something thoughtful. Instead, I pulled out a printed reservation confirmation for the Maple Crest Inn. 3 nights. Paid with Daniel's credit card. Under special requests, someone had typed, ground floor preferred. Elderly guest. I sat very still. Elderly guest. Not mother. Not Mrs. Holloway. Not grieving widow. Elderly guest. The words looked harmless. That was their cruelty. I folded the paper slowly and placed it beside Richard's watch case. By late morning, hunger came in a dull, unpleasant wave. I had not eaten since the church reception, where I remembered Vanessa hovering near the buffet, accepting compliments about the flowers as if she had arranged Richard's death with the same efficiency. There was a vending machine downstairs. I bought crackers and a bottle of water. The woman ate. The front desk glanced at my black dress and looked away quickly, embarrassed by my sadness. When I returned to the room, my phone had 3 missed calls from Daniel. Then a text. Mom, please don't make this harder. Vanessa is trying to help. We need to talk about long-term arrangements soon. Long-term arrangements. I sat on the edge of the bed and read it twice. Then another message arrived. There's a senior community in Glastonbury that looks really nice. No pressure. Just something to consider. No pressure. Just changed locks. Just packed suitcases. Just a motel. Just a senior community. My hands were calm now. That surprised me. I opened the banking app on my phone, not because I expected anything, but because the word arrangements had loosened something in my memory. Richard had managed most of our online banking after his diagnosis, not because I was incapable, but because he liked order. He kept passwords in a little black notebook locked in his desk drawer. When chemo made him weak, Daniel offered to help. You shouldn't have to worry about bills right now, he told me. I had thanked him. I actually thanked him. The checking account looked normal at first. Mortgage escrow, utilities, medical copays, grocery charges. Then I saw a transfer I did not recognize. $5,000. 2 months earlier. Memo line blank. I frowned and scrolled. Another. $8,000. Then $12,000. Each one spaced apart. Not close enough to look frantic. Not large enough to empty everything at once. Careful.
Quiet.
The way Vanessa moved through a room. My mouth went dry. I opened the joint household account history. Smaller transfers hid between hospital bills and insurance payments. $900. $1,400. $2,250. My mind tried to protect Daniel. Maybe Richard authorized them. Maybe Daniel borrowed money. Maybe there was an explanation. Mothers are very good at building bridges over facts we do not want to cross. Then I saw the date on one of the withdrawals. October 14th. The day Richard had been admitted overnight after a reaction to treatment. I had slept in a plastic chair beside his hospital bed that night, still wearing the same sweater from morning because I refused to leave him alone. The transfer had happened at 11:43 p.m. I stared until the numbers blurred. That was when I remembered Vanessa bringing me coffee at the hospital. You look exhausted, Margaret, she had said, touching my shoulder lightly. Why don't you rest? Daniel and I can handle anything that comes up at the house. At the time, I thought she was being kind. Now I could hear the sentence differently. Handle anything. At the house. A knock sounded at the motel room door. I froze. Not a loud knock. 2 polite taps. For a moment, I imagined Daniel standing outside with guilt in his eyes. I imagined him saying he was sorry, that everything had gotten out of hand, that Vanessa had pushed too hard and he had been too weak to stop her. I stood carefully and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw only the housekeeper's cart. "Housekeeping," a woman called. "No, thank you," I answered. My voice sounded older than it had yesterday. I sat back down and continued scrolling through the bank records, each transaction loosening another memory. The filing cabinet left open in Richard's office. Vanessa asking whether my name was on all the accounts. Daniel suggesting I sign routine paperwork while Richard slept. The way conversation stopped when I entered the room. None of it had seemed cruel at the time. That was how betrayal survived inside families. It did not arrive wearing a mask. It arrived carrying groceries, making coffee, offering to help with passwords. By evening, the motel room had darkened again. I had taken off my funeral dress and hung it over the back of a chair. Without it, I felt strangely exposed, like grief had been my last formal protection. I changed into a cardigan and sat beside the window with Richard's watch case in my lap. The phone rang at 2:07 in the morning. I flinched so hard the watch case nearly slipped from my hands. For one disoriented second, I thought it was the hospital calling again. Then I saw the name on the screen. Harold Bennett, Richard's attorney. I answered with a voice that barely sounded like mine. "Hello." There was a pause. Then Harold said, very quietly, "Margaret, did Daniel force you out already?" The motel room felt colder after the call. With Harold ended, I pressed my hand against my forehead, trying to slow the rapid thoughts that had begun spinning inside my head. For 4 days, I had allowed grief to keep me tethered to a fragile sense of reality, a reality where my family was safe, and yet, the truth had been lying beneath the surface, quiet, patient, waiting to be noticed. Harold had spoken softly, deliberately, his words a quiet but powerful echo. "Margaret." Richard prepared for the possibility that things could go wrong. He wanted you protected, not vulnerable. Protected, not vulnerable. The words felt almost absurd in a world that had just expelled me from my own home. My chest tightened, a mixture of disbelief and the first spark of cautious hope. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the pale ceiling. My fingers brushed against the folded sympathy cards I had kept close, the paper still damp from the mist that had clung to me that first night outside our house. Each card was a small reminder of the world outside, a world that had continued moving while my own had been shattered. The memories came, unbidden but precise. Richard in his recliner, pale and exhausted from chemotherapy, his hair thinning and his hands resting lightly on the arms of the chair. He had looked up at me that evening, eyes heavy, and whispered a small joke about the curtains needing washing. I had smiled, brushed a shoulder, and left the room thinking he was tired. Not cautious. Not aware. Vanessa had been there more than once, her smile bright and rehearsed, helping Richard manage the accounts, the passwords, the files. At the time, I had seen only kindness, only assistance. I had not seen calculation. Not subtle, but so well hidden that even I, who had spent a lifetime reading people, had been deceived. I realized now that Richard had seen it. He had seen the small, quiet shifts. The way Daniel's eyes avoided his when finances were discussed. The way Vanessa lingered near the filing cabinets with a folder labeled household accounts in her hand, smiling too quickly, too knowingly. These small things, the ones I had overlooked, had been Richard's alarm bells. And he had acted. Harold's next words echoed through the dim room, slowly piecing themselves into a framework that felt both immense and inevitable. He established a family trust 3 months after his diagnosis. The house, accounts, and assets were moved. And he instructed me to contact you only if certain conditions occurred after his passing. The sentence landed with a weight heavier than grief. Richard had not left me unprotected. He had foreseen betrayal, not sickness. Not mortality. Betrayal. He had known what I did not. The quiet erosion of care and attention could become active harm once he was gone. I sank onto the second bed, the floral bedspread stiff beneath me. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from clarity. For decades, I had nurtured this family, raised a son, loved a husband, kept the home, tended the garden, remembered birthdays, anniversaries, small details, and quiet hurts. I had done everything a wife, mother, and grandmother could do. And now, in the hours after Richard's funeral, the real test of love and loyalty had been revealed. Richard had seen it. He had watched Daniel's impatience accumulate. Vanessa's smiles sharpened subtly into something else. He had seen the pattern forming quietly and had prepared for it. And somehow, the man who had spent months in a hospital bed while I sat beside him, who had fought against pain and exhaustion, had orchestrated protection for me, the very person he loved most, without my knowing. I pressed my fingers against the watch case once more. His handwriting on the outside of the envelope was firm, deliberate, unmistakable, Margaret. I could imagine him carefully writing the instructions, folding the papers, thinking of the moment I might need them. He had prepared not for illness, not for death alone, but for betrayal. The thought was almost unbearable, but it also sparked something inside me that I had not felt since the first moments of disbelief outside my own home, a quiet, deliberate clarity. I would have to wait. I would have to be careful. I would have to let the night stretch, let grief seem overwhelming, let Daniel and Vanessa believe they had succeeded. But I would begin to understand. I opened the small drawer in the motel desk, rifling through the contents of the case Harold had instructed me to keep close. There were statements, trust documents, letters Richard had written with painstaking clarity. Each line carried his voice, each instruction deliberate, protecting me from the very family I had trusted the most. I realized for the first time that grief was not my only burden. Understanding betrayal was its own weight, one that demanded precision, patience, and care. Richard had not merely loved me. He had shielded me from a future I had not yet imagined. And now I had to learn to use that shield. I sat there until dawn. The gray light of morning spilled across the motel room, faint and pale, but alive. I made a quiet cup of coffee, letting the warmth settle into my hands and through my chest. Each sip was deliberate, each breath measured. The world outside had continued without me. But inside that small room, holding Richard's papers, his watch, the faint scent of his favorite cologne lingering in my memory, I began to feel the first stirrings of purpose since the first night I had been locked out of my home. I would return. I would understand. I would see exactly what had happened in the house, and I would reclaim my place, not with anger, not with haste, but with the careful strength Richard had instilled in me through his foresight. The betrayal was clear, and for the first time, so was the path forward. I met Harold Bennett the following afternoon. The drive into downtown Hartford Hills felt strangely unreal, as though I were watching someone else's life through a windshield. The world looked exactly the same. Children climbed onto school buses. A landscaper loaded bags of leaves into a trailer. A young couple argued quietly outside a coffee shop. Life moved forward with its usual indifference. Mine had stopped 4 days earlier, when the hospital called. And whatever remained had shattered on my front porch the night Daniel changed the locks. I parked across from Harold's office and sat in the car for several minutes. The bakery next door was still there. Richard loved that bakery. For nearly 20 years, we stopped there on Saturday mornings. Blueberry muffins in the spring. Apple turnovers in the fall. One cinnamon roll every Christmas Eve that we split in the car because Richard always said food tasted better when it was technically against the rules. The memory hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was ordinary. Grief lived in ordinary things. The attorney's office occupied the second floor of a red brick building that had stood downtown longer than either Harold or Richard. When I stepped inside, the familiar scent of paper, coffee, and old wood greeted me. For a second, I almost expected Richard to appear around the corner carrying one of Harold's terrible cups of coffee and making fun of the framed legal certificates on the wall. Instead, Harold stood waiting beside his office door. He looked older than I remembered. The last few months had aged all of us. Margaret. His voice softened. I'm sorry. I nodded. Those 2 words had become the soundtrack of my life. I'm sorry. At the funeral. At the grocery store. at church, at the pharmacy. Everyone said them. Nobody knew what else to say. Harold led me into his office and closed the door gently behind us. The room overlooked Main Street. Rain clouds drifted slowly above the rooftops. On the corner of Harold's desk sat a framed photograph of him and Richard fishing 20 years ago. Richard was laughing in the picture, his head tilted back, completely unaware of all the things that would come later. The cancer, the betrayal, the funeral, the empty chair. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, Harold opened a thick file resting on his desk. "Before we discuss the legal documents," he said quietly, "there's something I need you to understand." I sat down. Harold removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Richard never stopped loving Daniel. My throat tightened immediately, because that was exactly what I had been afraid of hearing. Or maybe afraid of not hearing. Harold continued. "He didn't create the trust because he wanted to punish your son." His voice remained calm. "He created it because he was scared." The word hung in the room. Scared. I had never thought of Richard that way. Not really. Concerned? Yes. Protective? Always. But scared? No. Harold opened a folder and slid several pages toward me. They started asking questions shortly after his diagnosis. I looked down. Notes. Dates. Meeting summaries. Records. Harold pointed to one entry. 6 months earlier, Vanessa had requested copies of property documents. Another. Daniel asking questions about inheritance procedures. Another. Questions regarding transfer timelines after death. I felt sick. Not because of the documents. Because of the timing. Richard had still been fighting. Still sitting through chemotherapy. Still believing he had time. And already they were preparing for life after him. At first, Richard thought it was anxiety, Harold said. He assumed they were worried. I nodded slowly. That sounded like Richard. Always looking for the most generous explanation. Then things changed. Harold opened another file. Inside were handwritten notes. Richard's handwriting. Strong. Steady. Familiar. My eyes burned immediately. I reached out carefully, almost afraid to touch the pages. He began documenting things. I swallowed hard. The notes weren't dramatic. That made them worse. Small observations. Tiny concerns. Vanessa requesting account information twice in 1 week. Daniel asking about ownership transfers. Questions about taxes. Property rights. Bank access. Medical powers of attorney. Nothing alarming individually. Together? Something else. Something Richard couldn't ignore. I stared at one note. Vanessa asked if Margaret's name is on everything. Richard had underlined the sentence twice. A sudden chill moved through me. I remembered that dinner. I remembered Vanessa smiling while she asked. At the time it sounded harmless. Now it felt like someone had quietly measured the walls of my house before stealing it. Harold remained silent while I read. He understood. This wasn't legal work anymore. This was grief. This was discovery. This was a wife slowly realizing her husband had spent his final months protecting her from a danger she refused to see. Finally, Harold opened a desk drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope. The moment I saw the handwriting, my breath caught. Margaret. Written across the front. Richard's. Handwriting. My name. Simple. Ordinary. Devastating. My fingers trembled as Harold handed it to me. He left instructions. I couldn't speak. Harold's voice softened further. He told me not to give this to you unless I believed you needed it. I stared at the envelope. Suddenly, I didn't want to open it, because as long as it remained sealed, some part of Richard still felt alive. Still waiting. Still speaking. Opening it would make everything real. Harold seemed to understand. Take your time. I nodded, but eventually I slipped my finger beneath the seal. The paper unfolded carefully. Richard always folded letters precisely. Even now, the first sentence blurred immediately through tears. Margaret, if you're reading this, then things unfolded exactly the way I hoped they wouldn't. I stopped, closed my eyes, took a breath, then continued. First, I need you to know something. None of this is your fault. The tears came instantly. Not dramatic tears. Not loud sobbing. just quiet tears sliding down tired cheeks. Richard knew me. Even now, even after death. He knew exactly what I would be thinking, that I should have noticed, that I should have prevented it, that somehow I had failed. And his first instinct was still to protect me. The letter continued. He wrote about our first apartment, the one above the hardware store, the pipes that rattled every winter, the tiny kitchen where we burned our first Thanksgiving turkey, the yellow house we eventually bought, Daniel learning to ride a bicycle, Christmas mornings, summer storms, ordinary life, a lifetime condensed into several pages. Then the tone shifted.
Gently.
Almost reluctantly. I began noticing changes in Daniel last year. My stomach tightened, not all at once. Small things. Impatience. Entitlement. The belief that everything eventually belonged to him. I kept reading. Richard described moments I remembered. Moments I had dismissed. Vanessa discussing retirement communities while Richard sat at the same table. Daniel asking about property values. Questions about future ownership. Future control. Future decisions. Everything future. While Richard was still alive. One sentence stopped me completely.
A loving son.
Prepares for his father's recovery, not his mother's removal. I stared at those words for a long time. Harold said nothing. Outside the window, a delivery truck rolled past. Life continued. Inside the office, my understanding of my family changed forever. I turned to the final page. The handwriting looked shakier there. Cancer had taken its toll by then. But the words remained unmistakably Richard. If they have already hurt you, promise me something. Do not shrink yourself to protect people willing to discard you. The tears returned. Harder this time. Because I could hear his voice. I could almost feel his hand covering mine. You belong in that house.
You belong in that family.
And no one has the right to convince you otherwise. I lowered the letter slowly. The room remained silent. Harold gave me a moment. Then another. Finally, he pushed a second folder across the desk. I looked down. Bank statements. Transfer records. Highlighted transactions. Dozens of them. The same transfers I had seen in the motel room. And many more. Larger ones. Older ones. A pattern. A deliberate pattern. My heartbeat slowed. Not from fear. From certainty. The evidence stretched back months. Some transfers happened during hospital stays. Others occurred during treatment appointments. Several matched dates when Richard was heavily medicated. Too exhausted to monitor details. Too focused on survival. I looked up. Richard knew. Harold nodded. He suspected. I stared at the highlighted pages. Then at Richard's letter. Then back at the evidence. For the first time since standing outside my own locked front door, something changed inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Something quieter. Stronger. The grief remained. The betrayal remained. But beneath both, another feeling began to emerge.
Clarity.
The kind that arrives after illusion dies. Harold leaned forward slightly. There are more records. I met his eyes. I want to see everything. He nodded once. Then opened the next folder. And that was the moment I stopped looking at Daniel and Vanessa as family members making mistakes, and started looking at them as people who had been making plans. I left Harold's office carrying 3 things. Richard's letter, copies of the trust documents, and something much heavier than either of them. The truth. Not the complete truth. Not yet. But enough of it to understand that the last few months of my life had not unfolded the way I believed they had. The November air felt colder when I stepped back onto Main Street. The bakery next door was pulling fresh bread from the ovens. The scent drifted into the street, warm and familiar. For a moment, I almost turned toward it out of habit. Richard and I had spent years creating habits together. Saturday muffins. Sunday church. Tuesday grocery runs. Friday night movies on the couch. Small rituals. Tiny threads. A marriage was mostly tiny threads. And suddenly I found myself wondering how many tiny threads Daniel and Vanessa had been quietly cutting while I wasn't looking. I drove back to the motel in silence. The radio remained off. The heater hummed softly. Outside the windshield, Bare maple trees lined the roads like skeletons preparing for winter. Everything looked stripped down. Honest. Nothing hiding beneath leaves anymore. The moment I entered room 214, I spread the documents across the small table by the window. Bank statements, transfer histories, account summaries, pages and pages of numbers. For 38 years, Richard had handled most of our investments. Not because I couldn't, because he enjoyed it. He liked spreadsheets the way some people liked crossword puzzles. Every quarter, he sat at the dining room table with a yellow legal pad and reviewed everything. He called it giving our money a checkup. I smiled sadly at the memory. Then I opened the first folder. Within 30 minutes, I saw the pattern. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The largest withdrawals began shortly after Richard's diagnosis. Not immediately. That would have been obvious. Instead, they started slowly. $1,000, then $1,500, then $2,000. Always spaced apart. Always disguised among legitimate expenses. Like footprints hidden among hundreds of other footprints. Careful, patient, intentional. I pulled out a notebook from my purse and began making a list.
Date.
Amount. Destination account.
Notes. By.
Sunset. 3 pages were filled. The numbers made my stomach hurt. Not because of the money itself. Because of what the timing revealed. October 14th. Transfer. Richard hospitalized. August 22nd. Transfer. Chemotherapy appointment. September 3rd. Transfer. Emergency oncology consultation. The pattern repeated over and over. I sat back slowly. The room seemed quieter than before. Almost reverent. Like it understood something important had just happened. For the first time, I stopped asking whether Daniel and Vanessa had made mistakes. Mistakes happen once. Patterns happen repeatedly. A knock sounded on the motel room door. I nearly jumped. When I opened it, a young employee stood holding fresh towels. Housekeeping asked if you needed anything. I smiled politely. No, thank you. The girl nodded, then hesitated. You doing okay? The question caught me off guard. Not because it was profound, because it was sincere. A stranger had shown more concern in 3 seconds than my son had shown in 3 days. I swallowed. I'm getting there. She smiled gently, then left. After she disappeared down the hallway, I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. The loneliness hit hard. Not the loneliness of losing Richard. That grief lived somewhere deeper. This was a different loneliness. The loneliness of realizing your place in someone's life was never as secure as you believed. I returned to the table. Another statement. Another transfer. Then another. The amounts increased during the final month of Richard's life. Almost as if whoever was moving the money had grown more confident. Or more impatient. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Again. I stared at the screen. Then let it ring. A voicemail appeared seconds later. I didn't listen. Not immediately. Instead, I continued reading. 2 hours later, curiosity finally won. I pressed play. Mom. Daniel sounded tired. For a brief moment, he sounded like my son again. We need to talk. A pause. I know this has been difficult. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Vanessa and I are trying to make responsible decisions. Responsible. Another soft word. Like space. Like comfortable. Like arrangements. The language of people. Trying to disguise something ugly. The message continued. You can't stay in a motel forever. My eyes drifted toward the bank statements spread across the table. No, I whispered into the empty room. But apparently I wasn't supposed to stay in my own house either. I deleted the voicemail, then returned to the documents. Around 9 o'clock, I found something that made me stop completely. A transfer authorization form. One signature belonged to Richard. The second belonged to Daniel. I stared. My pulse quickened. The amount wasn't enormous. $3,000. But the date mattered. Richard had been undergoing aggressive treatment that week. I remembered because he could barely hold a fork. His hands trembled constantly. Yet somehow financial paperwork had been processed. I examined the signature closely. It looked like Richard's. Mostly. But something felt wrong. Not forged. Just rushed.
Weak.
Unlike every other signature I had seen from him over the years. A memory surfaced. Late September. Richard sitting at the kitchen table. Vanessa placing papers in front of him. Just routine banking paperwork. That's what she'd called it. Routine. I remembered because Richard looked confused. Medication had made him groggy that afternoon. I had offered to review the documents myself. Vanessa smiled. I already checked everything. At the time, I felt grateful. Now my stomach twisted. The same sentence looked different when viewed through Betrayal. Everything looked different. That was the cruel thing about Betrayal. It didn't only damage the present. It poisoned the past. Memories you once treasured became evidence. Trust became proof. Kindness became suspicion. By 10 o'clock, darkness filled the motel room. The only light came from the lamp beside the bed. Its yellow glow illuminated the stack of paperwork. I rubbed my eyes. Exhaustion settled into my bones. But I wasn't finished. One final account remained. The Household Emergency Fund. Richard created it years ago. A separate account for unexpected expenses. Roof repairs. Medical bills. Home emergencies. The balance should have been substantial. Instead, it was nearly empty. I checked the transaction.
History.
Then checked it again. 3 large withdrawals. All within 6 weeks. All routed through the same destination account. The same account receiving most of the other transfers. I wrote the number down carefully, then compared it to another document Harold had included. The account holder information. My breath caught. The account belonged to a limited liability company. Nothing unusual there. Until I read the company name. VG Property Solutions LLC.
Vega.
Vanessa Grant. Vanessa's maiden name.
Isette Frozen.
The motel heater rattled behind me. Traffic moved along Interstate 84. Somewhere nearby, a television played faintly through a neighboring wall. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. For several minutes, I simply stared at the page. Not because I couldn't understand it. Because I finally could. This wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't poor judgment. Someone had created a company. Opened accounts. Moved money. Built infrastructure. Planning. Preparation.
Time.
My throat tightened. Not from anger. From heartbreak. Because every document pointed toward the same unbearable conclusion. While I was sitting beside Richard's hospital bed, while I was helping him eat soup, while I was driving him to treatment, while I was praying he would survive, someone else had already begun preparing for what would happen if he didn't. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something inside me harden. Not my heart. That still belonged to Richard. Not my grief. That would never leave.
No.
Something else. Resolve.
Slow.
Quiet. Unshakable. The kind Richard himself possessed. The kind that rebuilt kitchens, raised families, paid mortgages, kept promises. I opened my eyes, reached for the notebook, and wrote one final sentence beneath the growing list of evidence. This started long before Richard died. Then I underlined it twice, because for the first time, I wasn't just mourning my husband. I was beginning to understand the full shape of the betrayal he had tried so hard to protect me from. And somewhere deep inside, I knew another truth was waiting. One even more painful than stolen money. I still didn't know how much Daniel had willingly participated in all of this. And that question terrified me more than any bank statement ever could. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling. The hum of the motel heater. The faint sound of trucks moving along Interstate 84. Then reality returned. Richard was gone. I was living in a motel. And my own son had locked me out of my home. The grief hit first. The betrayal followed immediately after. By now, they traveled together. I sat up slowly and reached for my glasses. Richard's watch case still rested on the nightstand beside his letter. For a moment, I placed my hand over both. A small ritual. A way of beginning the day with him. Outside, The sky was turning pale gray. Inside, my phone lit up. Another message from Daniel. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I opened it. Mom, we need to start discussing the house. The house. Not your house. Not Dad's house. The house. As if ownership had already changed. As if my absence had somehow erased 38 years. I kept reading. There are practical things we need to handle. Property taxes. Maintenance. Future plans. Future plans. The words settled heavily in my chest. I stared at them for several seconds before locking my phone and setting it aside. Then I made the mistake of opening social media. Vanessa's account appeared near the top of my feed. A new post. Uploaded less than an hour earlier. My stomach tightened. I clicked. The photograph showed my kitchen. My kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the windows Richard had installed himself 15 years earlier. The marble island sat spotless. Fresh flowers stood in the blue ceramic vase I bought during our anniversary trip to Vermont. And there was Vanessa, standing in the center of it all, smiling, holding a glass of white wine. The caption contained only 2 words. Fresh beginnings. I stared at the screen. The image blurred. Not because I was crying. Because something inside me finally stopped making excuses. Fresh beginnings. Richard had been buried 5 days ago. The sympathy flowers were probably still sitting on the dining room table. His slippers were likely still beside our bed. His toothbrush was probably still in the bathroom. And Vanessa was celebrating fresh beginnings. A memory surfaced suddenly. 3 months earlier, we had hosted a family dinner after one of Richard's better treatment weeks. Everyone sat around the dining room table. The same table where Daniel did homework as a child. The same table where Richard proposed replacing the kitchen floor. The same table where we celebrated birthdays and graduations and anniversaries. Halfway through dinner, Vanessa casually pointed toward the wall. The room would feel bigger if that cabinet was removed. I remembered looking at the cabinet. An old oak piece Richard built himself. It stays, Richard said immediately. Vanessa laughed. Just thinking out loud. At the time, nothing seemed unusual. Now I remembered the look she gave it. Not appreciation. Evaluation. Like someone walking through a property before renovation. Another memory followed. Then another. Tiny things. Small things. The kinds of moments families ignore. Until they don't. The previous Christmas. Vanessa rearranging furniture, without asking. Claiming she was helping. The spring before that. Suggesting we convert the downstairs office into a guest suite. The year before. Asking detailed questions about property values in the neighborhood. Individually, none of it mattered. Together, they formed something unsettling. A pattern, not of belonging, of acquisition. I spent the afternoon reviewing more documents from Harold. Around 3 o'clock, he called. How are you holding up? I looked around the motel room. The unmade bed. The stack of legal papers. The stale smell of coffee. I'm learning things I wish I didn't know. Harold was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stayed with me. Richard loved Daniel deeply. My throat tightened. I know. He wanted to believe Daniel was being influenced. Not evil. Not malicious. Influenced. The distinction mattered. At least to Richard. I stared out the window. Rain clouds were gathering again. Do you believe that? I asked. Harold took longer to answer. I believe your husband wanted very badly for it to be true. The silence afterward hurt more than the answer. Because I understood exactly what he meant. Love often survives longer than evidence. Especially a parent's love. Especially a father's. After the call ended, I found myself thinking about Daniel as a little boy. Age 7. Building a birdhouse in the garage with Richard. Age 10. Running through sprinklers in the backyard. Age 14. Breaking his arm during a baseball game and crying from embarrassment rather than pain. Those memories still existed. Nothing could take them away. But now they sat beside newer memories. Daniel avoiding eye contact. Daniel discussing senior communities. Daniel standing behind a chained door. The contrast was almost unbearable. Around 6 that evening, another memory surfaced. One I hadn't thought about in months. Richard and I had returned home unexpectedly from a doctor's appointment. The appointment ended early. When we entered the house, Vanessa was there. Alone. She looked startled. Not guilty. Startled. The filing cabinet in Richard's office stood open. Folders rested on the desk. Daniel wasn't home. Neither of us had known she planned to stop by. "Oh," she said quickly. "I was helping organize paperwork." Helping. Always helping. Richard said nothing during the drive to dinner that night. Nothing during dinner. Nothing on the drive home. Then, just before bed, he asked an unusual question. "Margaret, if something happened to me, would you know where everything is?" At the time, I thought he meant because of cancer. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe that was the moment. Maybe that was when concern became suspicion. Maybe that was when Richard started preparing. The realization settled over me slowly, like snow covering a field.
Quiet. Steady.
Inescapable. They hadn't decided to take control after Richard died. They had already begun claiming pieces of our life while he was still alive. The house. The accounts. The decisions. The future. Everything. I walked over to the table and opened my notebook. Beneath the sentence I'd written the previous night, "This started long before Richard died." I added another. "They were preparing while I was caregiving." I stared at the words, then underlined
them,
because that was the cruelest part. While I spent my days helping Richard survive, someone else had spent theirs preparing for his absence. The rain started shortly after sunset. Soft at first, then heavier. Droplets slid down the motel window in winding trails. I sat in the chair beside the glass and watched them. Hours passed. Darkness settled. The room grew quiet. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Another text. This time from Vanessa. "We need to schedule a time for you to collect whatever belongings you still need." Whatever belongings. As if my life consisted of forgotten objects in storage. Not memories. Not history. Not home. I read the message twice. Then a third time. And for the first time since leaving Cedar Grove Lane, I smiled. Not because anything was funny. Because I finally understood something. Vanessa believed she had already won. People make mistakes when they think the game is over. I looked toward Richard's letter. Then toward the trust documents. Then back to the rain-covered window. The motel room suddenly felt a little less like exile, and a little more like a waiting room. Because somewhere beyond the grief, beyond the humiliation, beyond the betrayal, something was beginning to change. And for the first time since standing on that porch with my suitcase beside the trash bins, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what Richard had left behind. And soon, Daniel and Vanessa were going to learn exactly what that was. The following morning, the sky was pale and clouded over, the kind of November morning that presses a chill into your bones before you've even stepped outside. I had learned one truth in the last few days. Grief could be a weapon, but clarity was the antidote. And clarity required patience. I sat at the small table in room 214, the motel lamp casting a dull yellow pool over Richard's letter and the thick folder of trust documents. My notebook was open, already filled with 6 pages of dates, transfers, and small observations. Today, I would begin cross-referencing every transaction, every suspicious note, every helpful intervention that Daniel or Vanessa had made while Richard was
alive.
The first coffee of the morning tasted weak, burnt even, but I drank it slowly. Each sip allowed me to think more clearly. My fingers traced the folded edges of Richard's letter. His words felt like a steadying hand on my shoulder, reminding me that I was not as powerless as they wanted me to believe. I reviewed the documents again. Bank statements side by side with hospital admissions, prescription refills, and invoices for medical equipment. The patterns were undeniable. Transfers coincided with hospital stays, chemotherapy treatments, days I had spent overnight in Richard's room. Vanessa's knowledge of the schedule was not incidental. I wrote carefully in my notebook. Transfers match Richard's treatment days. Multiple accounts. Hidden in normal payments. Precision and intent. Not a mistake. The room hummed around me. The soft sound of the heater, distant traffic, the occasional rattle from a vending machine down the hall. Normal life continued. Life had moved on outside my motel window while my own family had quietly worked to erase me from it. At some point, I noticed how tense my shoulders had become. I stood, stretching, and walked slowly to the window. Outside, a truck idled at the gas station. Its driver sipped from a coffee cup, oblivious to the storm unfolding in my small motel room. I let the quiet envy of normalcy wash over me briefly. Ordinary people, ordinary life. They didn't know what it felt like to watch the world move on while you're home. Your life, your family, were being claimed by the very people you raised and trusted. I returned to the table and began making a new list in my notebook. This time it was about logistics, not just observation. Transfers, bank accounts, key dates, Vanessa's movements, Daniel's absences, physical items moved or removed by late morning. The pile of notes had doubled. Each entry was precise, every observation supported by documents or memory. The act of recording them gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since the locks changed. Around noon, I reviewed my strategy aloud, softly so only I could hear it. They think I am broken, distracted, grieving too much to fight, but they underestimate how careful Richard was, and they underestimate me. I picked up the phone to call Harold, but stopped. I didn't need reassurance. I needed silence, focus, and patience. He would meet me later. For now, the work was mine alone. I opened the envelope Richard had left. The letter was still folded neatly, and as I reread certain sentences, I realized the careful foresight Richard had employed. Do not shrink yourself to protect people who are willing to discard you. I pressed the paper against my chest, feeling the weight of his love and his planning. It was almost a tangible thing, the confidence he had passed on to me. Hours passed. I checked and rechecked the bank statements. Small discrepancies became patterns. Patterns became evidence. Evidence became clarity. I traced lines across pages, connecting each transaction to hospital records, to my own observations, to memories of conversations that now took on an entirely different meaning. Vanessa and Daniel had believed I was too fragile to notice, that I would retreat into grief and allow them to assume control without question. They were wrong. By late afternoon, I had outlined a plan. Not impulsive, not vindictive, careful, quiet, legal, strategic. Everything Richard had prepared me to do. The kind of careful maneuvering that did not announce itself, but would be decisive when it mattered. I poured a second cup of coffee, now lukewarm but comforting, and leaned back in the chair. For the first time in 4 days, I felt the shift, the subtle shift from helplessness to preparation. This was no longer just a motel room. It was my command center. From here, I would observe, record, and act when the time was right. Daniel and Vanessa had moved pieces too soon, celebrated too early, and in their eagerness, had left the door open for a woman they thought was broken. But I was not broken.
Not yet.
And by evening, I would know precisely what to do next. By Friday afternoon, the decision had been made. I was going back to Cedar Grove Lane. The motel room, with its yellow light and hum of the heater, had been my temporary sanctuary, a place to gather evidence, memories, and resolve. Now it was time to confront the house that had been mine for decades and to observe, in silence, how Daniel and Vanessa had positioned themselves in my absence. I drove slowly, the November light fading as the sun sank behind the bare maple trees lining the streets. The neighborhood looked deceptively calm. Christmas lights hung from porches, twinkling faintly in the gathering dusk. Families were inside, doors locked, televisions flickering through half-closed curtains. It all seemed normal, ordinary, while my life had been quietly dismantled behind my own front door. My car came to a stop across the street. The driveway was lined with vehicles I did not recognize, luxury SUVs and sedans that had not belonged to us. Vanessa's friend Elise was there, a woman I remembered from a charity luncheon months ago, laughing and discussing table arrangements as if she had some vested interest in the Holloway family affairs. The memory made my chest tighten. I remained in the car for several minutes, studying the house. Inside, I could see movement. Daniel stood near the fireplace, holding a drink halfway to his mouth, talking with guests I did not know. Vanessa was beside him, laughing with effortless charm, the very picture of comfort and control. The house that Richard and I had built together for decades now felt like a stage they had rehearsed for. I checked the documents once more in my lap, then slid Richard's letter into my purse. Every note, every bank statement, every highlighted transaction reminded me that I was not powerless. I was armed with truth and careful planning. Harold arrived as I watched the scene. Quietly, he stepped out of his black sedan, briefcase under his arm. He gave me a small nod, acknowledging my presence. "You don't have to go inside immediately," he said, his voice low and measured. "Once I present these documents, everything changes legally." I nodded, taking a deep breath. My hands, once trembling with disbelief, were steady now. We walked across the street together. Gravel crunched beneath our shoes, a sound that seemed louder than usual, marking our approach. Inside, the soft murmur of conversations continued, the gentle clink of glasses, the faint strains of music from the dining room speakers. I felt the weight of all those evenings spent here, all the birthdays, all the Christmas mornings, all the quiet domestic moments that had been claimed, reassigned, erased. The front door opened. Vanessa's automatic smile faltered the moment she saw us. Her posture stiffened almost imperceptibly, the grace she maintained now tinged with unease. Daniel's drink lowered slightly, his eyes flickering toward me, a shadow of the boy he had been when he was 8, and I still held him in my arms during thunderstorms. Harold stepped forward calmly. "Good evening," he said. "I am here regarding the Holloway Family Trust." The room went still. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Guests became aware of a tension they had not noticed before. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel looked from Harold to me, confusion replacing his earlier arrogance. "This is not a good time," Vanessa said quickly, her voice a careful blend of courtesy and control. Harold ignored her. He handed her a thick envelope, deliberately, with a steady hand. "Legally speaking," he said, "this became exactly the right time the moment you removed Mrs. Holloway from her residence." Daniel blinked, trying to process the words. "What are you talking about?" he asked softly. Harold looked at him directly. "I am talking about the fact that neither of you currently owns this house." The silence that followed was suffocating. Soft jazz continued in the background, a faint clink of ice somewhere in the kitchen. Everyone present seemed to shrink back as the gravity of the statement settled. Vanessa was the first to recover, forcing a smile, though her fingers tightened against the envelope. "There has to be some misunderstanding," she said smoothly, though the careful politeness did nothing to hide her growing tension. "The original will was already explained to us months ago," she added, attempting control over the narrative. Harold remained calm. "The original will was replaced by a revised trust structure 6 months ago, which became fully active upon Richard's death." Daniel shook his head, disbelief flashing across his face.
No.
"Dad would have told me." Harold's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. He chose not to. That sentence may be the hardest to hear, but it is accurate. I stepped forward, finally, my winter coat brushing the hardwood floor. My presence was quiet, deliberate, but unmistakable. I met Daniel's eyes fully for the first time since the funeral. I let the long silence stretch, letting him feel, just briefly, the weight of absence, the consequences of action. "This is your father protecting me," I said softly. Not accusing, not yelling, just stating a fact. The room seemed to hold its breath. Vanessa flipped through the envelope, her smile fading line by line, page by page. Daniel's confusion deepened as the reality of their oversight, of their assumption of power, began to sink in. One by one, guests began slipping quietly toward the door. No one wanted to stand witness to the collapse of the image Vanessa had carefully curated. I watched as the illusion of control evaporated before my eyes, and I understood, more clearly than ever, the quiet power that Richard had left in my hands. I did not rush. I did not demand acknowledgement. I simply stood there, patient and calm, a widow no longer surprised, a mother reclaiming what had been denied her, and a woman beginning to see the intricate lines of betrayal laid bare. And somewhere in that pause, the first tremor of clarity settled over Daniel. His eyes flickered toward me, searching, hesitant, as though he remembered something he had long ignored. The son I had raised, the boy who had once clung to me during storms, the boy I had comforted through scraped knees and broken toys, was still there, somewhere beneath the carefully constructed masks. But that recognition, that faint glimmer of memory, was entirely overshadowed by the weight of reality. They had moved too soon, celebrated too early, and I was finally home. The house was quiet, but the silence was tense, almost alive. Every step I took on the hardwood floors felt deliberate, measured, a gentle announcement of presence without noise. Vanessa's posture had stiffened since Harold handed her the envelope. Daniel's confusion lingered like a shadow, the first flicker of understanding in his eyes. Harold cleared his throat and placed a second folder on the hall table. Its weight alone carried authority. "This," he said, his voice calm, "is the Holloway Family Trust, fully active as of Richard's passing. It supersedes the original will." I stepped forward and opened the folder. The papers inside were orderly, meticulous, and every line reflected Richard's foresight. I let my eyes drift slowly over the words, absorbing them without haste. Ownership, occupancy, and decision-making authority were clearly outlined. Lifetime residential control rested entirely with me. Any attempt to remove me, restrict my access, or force decisions against my will would result in the immediate forfeiture of rights for the offending parties. Daniel's and Vanessa's earlier actions, changing the locks, moving suitcases, reorganizing furniture, fell squarely into that category. Vanessa's voice wavered slightly. This isn't possible. We were helping manage things." Harold's gaze remained steady. "Intent does not change the legal framework. The trust includes behavioral clauses, carefully designed to protect Mrs. Holloway. Any attempt to override them constitutes a breach, with immediate consequences." Daniel's eyes widened. "Mom, this means—" "Yes," I said quietly. Not accusatory, not triumphant, just steady. "It means the house is mine, and I will decide how to proceed." Harold opened a small envelope inside the folder and pulled out copies of bank statements, investment accounts, and transfer records. He highlighted the relevant lines for Vanessa and Daniel to see, each entry corresponding to the misappropriations I had already identified in the motel. The guests who remained silent shifted slightly, realizing they were witnessing more than a legal discussion. They were witnessing the slow, undeniable reclaiming of dignity by a woman they had assumed powerless. Daniel's shoulders slumped. "Dad would never, we didn't know." Harold interrupted gently. "Richard foresaw that possibility. He prepared these measures precisely because he anticipated the actions taken this week." Vanessa's face went pale. Her polished composure cracked as she flipped through the documents. There was no denying them.
"No."
Recourse against the trust's immediate activation. I didn't speak again. I simply watched as the two people who had tried to control my life realized the consequences of their actions. The house, which had seemed lost, suddenly felt like home again. Every piece of furniture, every photograph that had been left in place, every detail that Richard had protected was a reminder that what mattered was not what they wanted, but what had been entrusted to me. Harold closed the folder and stepped back. "I recommend letting Mrs. Holloway decide the next steps. The documents are legally binding and fully enforceable. Any further attempts to act against her wishes will have consequences you cannot reverse." Vanessa's voice was small now, unsure. "We can challenge this?" Harold's expression remained calm. "You are welcome to try. The law and Richard's foresight are clear. Any challenge will only reaffirm Mrs. Holloway's position if you continue with the same behavior." I looked at Daniel. For the first time, I saw the boy I had raised, not the man who had changed the locks. Confusion.
Fear.
Hesitation. A glimpse of the sun beneath layers of manipulation. I let the silence linger. Quiet. Heavy. Meaningful. For the first time since the funeral, I felt in control, not out of anger, but out of clarity and purpose. Every action I would take next would be deliberate, grounded in fact, in law, and in the careful planning Richard had left me. The house was mine. And for the first time since the night I was locked out, I felt like myself again. The house was still, not silent, not empty, but still in a way that made the walls themselves feel like witnesses. Guests who had arrived earlier for drinks and small talk lingered near the dining room and staircase, unsure whether to speak or move. Vanessa's confidence had thinned into tension. Daniel's face was pale, eyes wide with the first hints of regret. Harold handed Daniel a small flash drive. Richard anticipated this, he said softly. He recorded instructions specifically for situations like this. Daniel stared at the device as if it weighed 50 pounds. His hands shook slightly. Vanessa's fingers hovered over his shoulder. Hesitant, unsure how to intervene. I stepped back and watched. There was no dramatic confrontation.
No shouting.
Just a calm, deliberate pause in which the reality of the night settled over everyone in the room. Daniel inserted the flash drive into the television console. The screen flickered black, then an image gradually emerged. Richard sat in his office, wearing the navy sweater I had bought him last Christmas. His face was thinner than I remembered, the exhaustion of hospital nights and chemotherapy lines beneath his eyes, but his posture was straight.
Firm. Familiar.
If you are watching this, he said, his voice deliberate, calm, and measured, then something has happened that I hoped never would. Daniel, if your mother is standing outside her own home while you sit inside it, then you have lost sight of who you are. Daniel lowered his head immediately. Shoulders tightened. Vanessa's hands tightened slightly on his shoulder, but the gesture did nothing to erase the truth in Richard's words. Richard continued, each word slow, careful, precise. Your mother spent her entire life protecting this family. Every birthday, every Christmas morning, every soccer game you barely remember happened because she made this house feel safe. If you allowed anyone to convince you she became disposable after my death, then you failed both of us. The room remained silent. Everyone absorbed the weight of the recording differently. Guests shifted uneasily. Some whispered to one another, realizing they were witnessing more than legal enforcement. They were witnessing a moral reckoning, a quiet but undeniable correction. Vanessa, always the first to control appearances, finally spoke. This is impossible, she said, voice tight. We were handling things while you were grieving. Richard's gaze, calm and unwavering in the video, shifted slightly. Vanessa, if greed ever mattered more than compassion, then I imagine these documents surprised you tonight. They are not punishment, they are protection. Love without accountability destroys families slowly. Tears blurred my vision, though I did not look away. Each word from Richard carried the weight of all the quiet, overlooked actions, transfers, removed furniture, subtle manipulations. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Dad. But Richard's words could not be interrupted. They continued across time, bridging absence and presence, justice and grief. If there is still goodness left in this room, then start by giving your mother back her dignity. The video ended. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was heavier than the words themselves. Daniel stood frozen, staring at his own reflection in the black screen. Vanessa's confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by uncertainty and the realization that they had misjudged everything. Harold closed his briefcase quietly. Formal notice regarding residency termination timelines will follow. Mrs. Holloway will decide how to proceed. Daniel finally turned toward me, his eyes red, voice small. Mom, I don't know how it got this far. I studied him for a long moment. The same blue eyes Richard had passed down. Nervous habits, faintly visible. The son I had raised, hidden beneath layers of manipulation and error, was still there. Neither did I said quietly. I walked past him to the hallway. My winter coat, still hanging exactly where I had left it, brushed softly against the floor. Outside, the November wind pressed against the house. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee again. Furniture, pictures, details, everything Richard had preserved, remained untouched. I placed his photograph back above the staircase, above the memories he had safeguarded for us. And finally, I understood something grief had hidden from me, They had changed the locks thinking they were shutting me out of my own life. But Richard had already made sure the only people truly locked out were the ones who forgot what family was supposed to mean. 3 weeks later, Daniel and Vanessa moved out. There was no dramatic goodbye.
No shouting.
No final argument on the front lawn. No moment where everyone suddenly became honest and apologized for everything they had done. Real life rarely works that way. Instead, there were moving trucks, cardboard boxes, awkward silences, and a painful understanding that some damage cannot be undone. Simply because the truth comes out. I stayed away while they packed, partly because Harold advised it, mostly because I wasn't ready. The house had already witnessed enough heartbreak. It didn't need another performance. On a cold Sunday morning, I drove back to Cedar Grove Lane. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Frost still clung to the edges of lawns. The neighborhood looked exactly as it always had. Children rode bicycles. A golden retriever barked from behind a fence. Someone down the street was hanging Christmas lights. Life moved forward. It always did. Even when you wished it wouldn't. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment. The house looked smaller somehow. Or maybe grief had simply changed my perspective. The shutters Richard painted every spring were still blue. The maple tree he planted when Daniel was born still stood beside the front walk. The porch light glowed warmly despite the daylight. For several seconds, I simply stared. Then I reached for my keys. My keys. The new locks clicked softly. The sound was almost insignificant, yet tears immediately filled my eyes. Because this time, the door opened. This time I was going home. The house greeted me with silence. Not the hostile silence of abandonment. The quiet silence of a place waiting to be lived in again. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The scent hit me first.
Cedar. Coffee.
Furniture polish. Home. I stood in the foyer and let the feeling wash over me. Not victory. Not triumph. Something gentler. Relief. My eyes drifted toward the staircase. Richard's photograph hung exactly where I had placed it after the confrontation. His smile looked unchanged.
Steady. Warm. Familiar.
For a moment, I almost spoke to him. I still caught myself doing that sometimes. The grief hadn't disappeared simply because justice had arrived. Grief doesn't work that way. I carried my grocery bags into the kitchen. Milk.
Bread. Eggs. Coffee.
The ordinary things. The things that continue long after funerals end. The refrigerator felt strangely empty. So did the house. I unpacked everything slowly.
No rushing. No distractions.
Just quiet routine. The kind Richard and I shared for decades. When I finished, I filled the coffee maker. The machine gurgled softly as it brewed. The sound immediately transported me backward. Thousands of mornings. Thousands. Richard reading the newspaper. Me standing by the counter. The smell of coffee drifting through sunlight. Tiny moments that never seemed important until they became impossible. I poured 2 cups automatically. The habit was so deeply rooted that I didn't realize what I had done until I looked down. 2 cups. My throat tightened. Slowly, I poured one back into the pot. Then carried the remaining cup to the kitchen table. I sat down carefully. And there it was.
The chair.
Richard's chair. Empty. The same empty chair I had been avoiding in my mind for weeks. I stared at it. Not for seconds. For minutes. The morning light touched the wood gently. Dust floated through the air. The house remained still. This was the part nobody talks about. The part after justice. The part after the lawyer wins. The part after the documents are revealed. The part after the people who hurt you leave. You still wake up alone. You still reach for someone who isn't there. You still hear a laugh in your memory and turn your head before remembering. Justice cannot bring back a husband. It cannot restore lost time. It cannot erase disappointment. It can only give you room to heal. And sometimes that has to be enough. My phone vibrated quietly on the table. A text message. Daniel. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I am sorry. Dad was right. I lost sight of who I was. I read the message twice. Then a third time. The words hurt. Not because they were cruel, because they came too late. The son I loved was finally speaking honestly. But honesty after betrayal feels different than honesty before it. Trust doesn't grow back overnight. I set the phone down. No reply. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. Some wounds require distance before they can become scars. Outside, a car passed slowly. A neighbor waved through the window. Life continued. Inside, I stood and walked toward the living room. The funeral flowers were finally gone. The sympathy card sat, stacked neatly beside the bookshelf. Richard's blanket still rested across the arm of his recliner. I picked it up, held it briefly, then folded it carefully. Not because I was ready to move on, because I was ready to move forward. There is a difference. Moving on suggests forgetting. Moving forward means carrying the memory with you. I walked into Richard's office. For the first time since his death, I sat behind the desk. The room looked exactly as he left it. Reading glasses,
Pens.
a yellow legal pad, the framed fishing photograph with Harold. Everything ordinary, everything precious. On the corner of the desk sat a small note. His handwriting, just 3 words. A grocery reminder he never got to finish. But seeing it made me smile. A real smile. The first one in weeks. Because it reminded me that Richard wasn't defined by cancer, or trust documents, or legal protections. He was defined by the thousands of ordinary acts of love that filled our life together. The house felt warmer by afternoon. Sunlight moved across the hardwood floors. The heating system hummed quietly. For the first time since the funeral, I opened the curtains completely. Light flooded the rooms. Not because the pain was gone, because I was still here. And that mattered. As evening settled over Cedar Grove Lane, I returned to the kitchen with another cup of coffee. I sat at the table again. The empty chair remained across from me. Always would. I finally understood something Richard had been trying to teach me throughout our marriage. A home is not protected by locks. Not really. It is protected by love, by loyalty, by the people willing to choose each other every day. Daniel and Vanessa forgot that. Richard never did. The house belonged to me again. The trust ensured that. The law confirmed it. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was something quieter. I had survived. The grief, the humiliation, the loneliness, the betrayal. I survived all of it. And I remained myself. Not bitter. Not broken. Just wiser. Outside, the porch light came on automatically as darkness settled over the neighborhood. The same porch light that had shone above me the night my son locked me out.
I
Looked toward the front door, then toward Richard's empty chair, and finally allowed myself one last truth. They thought they were locking me out of my own life. In the end, they only locked themselves out of the family Richard spent a lifetime building. I lifted my coffee cup toward the empty chair. A small private gesture. A goodbye.
and a thank you.
Then I smiled softly into the quiet house. The house was mine again. But some victories still come with an empty chair.